Hi, we're going to talk about tariffs because everybody's losing their goddamn mind out there, myself included. The one thing I want to sort of say is that the ground is moving underneath our feet. So it's a bit presumptuous to sort of imagine or think we know where this lands and how that's going to affect our specific hobby, which, let's face it, that's a very sort of self-interested luxury that we have. Oh, the cheap toys we collect are going to become too expensive or too scarce or whatever the case may be. There are much more crucial, more important things to worry about in the world. I would also say anyone claiming to know what happens next is absolutely full of shit, and I would caution a heavy dose of skepticism there. What I think likely is going to happen is that without an intervening force, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, tariffs are likely going to be a sort of weather report style thing. You wake up in the morning, you check what they are, you hope your shipment catches whatever the favorable rate is, and then, you may have to delay things according to where that rate is. There is no U.S. manufacturing solution to everything that's been offshored, right? There's been more than a 50-year systematic campaign to demolish labor in the U.S. and to atomize unions. This goes back long before I ever existed. It's been a pretty strategic and purposeful act forced upon the working class of the United States. To give some historical context here, we had the New Deal, right? And the New Deal happened in part in response to the fall of the Tsar in Russia and the rise of communism. It became clear that the American people needed to be offered something as an alternative to communism that was, again, ascended at that moment. So we got the New Deal, and we got great things like the park systems. We got a 5-day work week. Children couldn't be laborers anymore. A lot of good things came out of the New Deal. But almost immediately, a countervailing force was formed to fight the New Deal. Essentially, people didn't want to pay for things that the New Deal was going to give to everybody as a promise. As the benefit of the New Deal started to wane, the new promise for American citizens was one of cheap goods, of affordable electronics, of small plastic playthings that were bountiful and plentiful, and manufactured overseas as less and less companies decided to spend the money and invest the money domestically in their workforce. That's kind of the devil's bargain of cheap goods. It requires that labor be stamped out to its absolute lowest possible cost through violent means if necessary. The question at the moment is not how far can the tariff situation go, but rather what is the intervening force. Now, normally, in previous decades, Congress would serve as a sort of countervailing force to anarcho-capitalistic tendencies. I believe Citizens United, which said you could have unlimited campaign contributions from corporations or anywhere else, effectively sidelined Congress as being a meaningful way to intervene in anything. Because post Citizens United, you have not senators or elected officials being able to decide which policies to push back about, but rather all control was handed over to the donor class. But the donor class is paralyzed as well. They are afraid of catching the wrath of the current administration or having government subsidies cut to whatever their enterprises may be. They're all speaking very carefully as not to overturn the apple cart. It's become a perfect circular clusterfuck. So what is the solution here? I don't know. I have no idea. I think it's a good time to go inward and think about why plastic cheap playthings are so compulsive, so obsessive, so meaningful, and if there's other things that you can kind of substitute in your life to gain meaning. Now, I would imagine for a majority of toy collectors out there, there's an aesthetic pleasure or experience they get when they open a toy. The colors, the articulation, the posing, it stimulates a part of their brain in a surprising or pleasant way. There are other things in life that give aesthetic experiences. A beautiful painting, a poster, a print, a hand-drawn trading card, art on a post-it note. Anything can give you that experience. It doesn't have to be made of plastic. This kind of folds back into what I'm always saying, that you should support independent creators. And you should do so as much as humanly possible. If you can cut out, and you may have to in the near future, the vast majority of mass market available plastic toys, that's going to leave more open money that you can funnel into artists that you like. If there's a comic book creator that you adore, go buy a signed copy of their book off of their Etsy store. Hell, I've heard about this thing called Patreon, where you can directly put money into the pocket of artists. What I mean to suggest here is that going to Target and pulling something off of the shelf that's going to put a couple cents in Mattel's pocket or Hasbro's pocket is a less meaningful way to experience collecting than directly interacting and purchasing something from an individual artist. What does all this mean for my business? Again, the answer is I don't know. Again, the ground is shifting under our feet, so it seems a little silly to kind of be making huge changes or pivots, as it were. I do think one of the immediate things that's going to happen here is that a vast majority of toy wholesalers are probably going to close shop, right? There's not a ton of margin in being a wholesaler. I think institutions like Big Bad Toy Store will probably be okay, maybe Entertainment Earth. Outside of that, it's going to be really tough to survive. I expect a lot of people are just going to throw in the towel right away. I think also a vast majority of small independent makers, guys that set up at shows on the weekends, they're probably going to go and find meaningful employment elsewhere. And that's very sad. I think there's going to be a real brain drain of creative people from this hobby. I think ultimately it's upon all of us to support as many of these people directly as we can and where we can. The final thing I want to say here is that a lot of people are saying, oh, toys are dead, toys are over, action figures are dead. I would say, yeah, but it died a long time ago. This industry has been in decline for a very long time. When I first started in the industry over 20 years ago, this was when the sort of McFarlane boom of the 90s had finally started to die off. And very rapidly, a lot of companies went under almost immediately. The sort of action figure boom, which followed the comic and card boom of the 90s, made the universe expand rapidly, very quickly, and then quickly shrink. As an independent toy maker and an artist, there is absolutely an existential crisis at play at the moment. But I hate to clue everybody in, there's always been an existential crisis as an independent toy maker. As somebody that, puts their own money into their projects, that has to pay for everything up front, I've always been one step away from going completely under. This is nothing new to me at all. If we are dealing with a worst case scenario, my hope is that a good portion of my followers, my patrons, will continue on. Should plastic be off the table completely, I will make one-of-a-kind pieces, whether that's paintings, mixed media, soundtracks, a mixture of all these things together. I will still continue to produce everything I have and share it with the community. Whether or not that is worth the same dollar amount, if people are solely in this for the plastic plaything, I don't know, and I can't really expect that that is the case. This is also kind of why I focus so heavily on live events, and I feel that getting communities together, being in the same room, mixing that hobby of toy collecting with things like great food and live music and videos and just creating a full experience is kind of something that you can't really put a tariff on, right? It's not a destructive or disposable thing. It is kind of this ethereal proposition. And so there's no coincidence that I shifted hard into focusing on live events last year. And I think that, that may provide a path for some level of fulfillment. Whether that's completely a monetary return, I don't know, and it never has been, but it is at least something. So I guess in closing, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to stop making things. What those things are made out of might change, may not be under my control. But again, all of this is a very fluid situation. So I'm not really going to say conclusively much of anything other than I have work to do. I have envelopes to stuff, and it doesn't change my day-to-day at this moment in time. Be thankful for what you've been able to get so far. Realize that things may be scarce in the future. And again, it all comes back to if there are artists out there that are making things that are meaningful to your life, find a way to put money directly in their pocket. Now, more than ever, if you love what they do, they may not be able to do it much longer or once we get to the other side of this downward slide. That's all. Jesse D'Stasio. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.